If you are one of the 6 million people who watch the Tony Awards every single year, then this video is for you. I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with Marjorie Horne, who has been the stage manager for the Tony Awards for the past 15 years, about exactly what it takes to put up Broadway's biggest event. My name is Kent, and this is your half-hour call.
Half hour, please. This is your half-hour call. Half hour, please.
Alrighty friends, welcome back to another episode of Half Hour Call. If you are here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kent, and you are watching Half Hour Call, where we shine the spotlight on technical theater. And make sure you stick around until the end of the video, where Marjorie will share some of the secrets that most people do not know about the Tony Awards. Let's watch. Thank you so much for coming onto the show today. I'm very excited to get to talk to you about the Tony Awards.
Thank you, Kent. Thank you for asking me.
For those of you that aren't obsessed with you like I am, what is your role in the Tony Awards?
The Tonys, obviously, they were supposed to be doing their 74th year this year. Mostly the Tonys, for most of the time, were in a Broadway theater, and they were stage managed by a theater stage manager. And the shows would bring things over, and it was very minor sets and all of that. And there was a Broadway stage manager, he's still around, named Alan Hall. I want to make sure I plug him because he's extraordinary. He had been doing it since the 70s. He had been stage managing the Tony Awards, and he moved over to Radio City as the stage manager. Get into the discussion of stage manager on TV and stage manager in theater in a moment. There were 2 years that it became a big TV special, and they didn't use him and didn't use a theater stage manager. And all the shows went to Equity and said, we don't have anybody that's talking our language. Nobody knows that. They're trying to schedule rehearsals on Wednesday afternoon. And it was like, we can't do that. Can we have somebody that understands us? They had Alan come back. Equity has a contract with the league and the Tonys. Because of what happened with Alan Hall, in the Tony contract, there is a paragraph that says the TV office, the producers, must have at least one theater stage manager from the beginning of the Tonys onwards. And I now hold that contract because Alan Hall brought me in. We both worked them for 2 years, and then he retired. Now I do have another partner, and the two of us work together. But at Howard Collins, who was vice president, I think, of Radio City for a long time, he is my partner on the Tony Awards. He does not hold an Equity contract. He is a freelance. What's been wonderful is I've been doing the show for like 15 years now. And it just feels like, wait a second, he just brought me on a couple of years ago, but that's not true. Now I'm the senior member of the company. I am the only Equity stage manager on the TV show. All the other stage managers are Directors Guild. The TV stage managers are very different. They don't come on until the week of the show when we move into Radio City. On the other side, I start my job, Howard and I start our job the day of the nominations. Mm-hmm. And we get to go to the nominating broadcast. And then we run back to the office and start calling all the musicals that have been nominated and their offices. So our contacts are the general managers and the stage managers. So the stage managers of each show are involved from the beginning, but they are a separate entity all the way through. And the SAG-AFTRA contract for them doesn't go into place until the week they move, that they come in to rehearse at Radio City. So it's a very different concept. The director on the TV show is the person who calls, and all of the different departments pretty much go on their own. The stage managers for the shows that are performing, they come in, they take care of their companies, but as soon as they hit the stage, the DGA stage managers take care of what's happening, and they're just kind of supervising, helping the DGA stage managers. Okay, this is where there's going to be a fast change. This is where this entrance happens, so that they're coordinated. But they're not part of the show per se. So it's a very interesting combination. And interestingly, a tidbit, a bit of history is when I came on, first of all, it was a much simpler show than it is now. 15 years ago, only the nominated shows were allowed to perform. So there would be, if there was only 2 revivals, only 6 shows performed. And as the gentlemen that produce and direct the show now saw what it was that they were doing, and I think they only came in a year before me, especially the director really started understanding, because he comes from TV, but he started understanding theater. And he just built and built and built, and he got the league that he and Glenn Weiss and Ricky Kirshner are the 2 main people from the TV part of it. And they started going to the league and said, why aren't you letting more of the shows participate? So now, going from 6 to 8 shows, sometimes we've had 15 shows participate on the show. So that my job and our jobs has gotten really exponentially bigger.
You said you've been working the Tony Awards for 15 years, but how did you first get involved? How did your name come up for the replacement?
Alan Hall was a Broadway stage manager, did musicals, etc. I did not come from Broadway. I'm an off-Broadway stage manager. My milieu was serious drama. And I started out as a production stage manager at a theater called Circle Repertory Theater, which is Lanford Wilson and Marshall Mason. And I started as an ASM on a show called When You're Coming Back, Red Ryder. And Marshall liked me and took me under wing and kept me there. I was transitioning from being an actor, dancer. For the life of me, I loved off-Broadway, but I could not break into Broadway. And I certainly wasn't a musical person. I was elected to Equity Council, and there's where I met Alan Hall. But he and I did not get along well. Different personalities, different backgrounds, different everything. I started doing events and not just theater. And he knew that I was doing events. And he called me one day and said that the league was looking for somebody to do this event that they used to do, which was a wonderful event called Covers On. And we did it at Sardi's, and it was about 3 or 4 understudies from Broadway who were introduced by the star that they were performing for, that they were understudying. So he asked me if I wanted to do it. And I jumped at the chance. It was great fun. It was my first time working for the league and the theater wing. This was a theater wing event. So there is a man named Roy Somlio who you should Google and look up his history, because he's a wonderful one. He was a wonder. I was so glad that I got to meet him and work with him. Anyway, he gave Alan all kinds of kudos for me and everything. So all of a sudden, Alan and I got along better. And when he was thinking of retiring, he sat me down and he started talking about the Tony Awards, and I had no idea. That's how I came aboard. So it was certainly not anything that was in my peripheral vision of ever being that kind of part of Broadway. And now I am. It's an extraordinary job. One of the things that I say is that because I have that job and I'm where I am in my career, I can say whatever I want to the general managers. I can say whatever I want to the producers. And I have a great relationship with a lot of them that I never had before. And the camaraderie is extraordinary.
That's such an interesting path to that job. That's
exactly.
So neat. But speaking of paths to jobs, how did you get into stage management as a whole?
But I was an actress and a dancer. And I came to the city from Miami. And I had danced on cruise ships on the weekends. But I don't sing. I was a good dancer. I was a pretty good actress. But if you want to be in musical theater and you don't sing, doesn't work. So in 1971, I had been doing a job here, a job there, showcases here in the city, but I wasn't making a living. One of my alternate jobs that I did for 2 years was I was a go-go dancer. So that was a great alternate job. Anyway, so I would do that and I would go off. So in the summer of 1971, I got a job at a very famous summer stock company called Allenbury Playhouse in the Pocono Mountains. And John Travolta was part of that company. He got his equity card in that company. And I got another job fairly quickly. In a straight play on the road, I did Philadelphia. I started out as the prop person understudy, and it was a very serious play called No Place to Be Somebody. It had gone to Broadway. It was a big road company. We were kind of the tail end of it. I had a terrible, terrible experience. I was very insecure about my acting to begin with, although I was getting good things. But the director, who was also the stage manager, just had it in for me. It was also a time of drugs. I was a hippie. And on my day off, I'd drop acid and go do something and whatever. I had a very bad experience on stage. And I came back and I said, I can't do this. I cannot take that scrutiny anymore on myself. And so I literally for a year, I studied acting, but I didn't do anything. And one day my roommate came home and said, you got to get out of the house. Circle Repertory Theater, which at that point was just down the block from where I live, she said, go and look for something, do something. And I went, I got interviewed, and I got put on as the assistant stage manager for the show. And it was something that fit me. It did really well. And then, as I said before, Marshall Mason took me under wing, and I stage managed the next show for him. So I stayed there that whole season. I got to be in a show, I got to assist a couple shows, and I stage managed a couple shows. And it was the perfect fit for me. And I went on and I started working. And within 3 years, I was making a living. I remember the moment when the decision was made. I was going to a dance class. It was raining. I had my black and white patent leather raincoat on. And I went, okay, I'm not going to make it as a performer, as an actress. But I have to be in the business. I have to find a spot for myself. And I'm one of those people that was able to do it. But let's talk about the specifics of the Tony.
Yeah, let's dive into it. So you talked a little bit about it, but what's the production process like? You talked about when the stage managers, when the 3 different types of stage managers are brought on board. Right. But what's the process like? So once you get started, you said the nominations come out and you get to be involved in that and you start calling people.
Right.
How does that all
So the process is, the first thing that has to happen is that each show that we know we're going to perform, that are going to perform, the musical nominees, that's the first section. Howard and I are on the phone with the general managers and the stage managers, and the first thing that has to get set up is a creative meeting. What are they going to do on the show? Are they going to do one of their numbers? Are they going to do a mishmash? They only get 3 minutes and 45 seconds at the most. So we set up those creative meetings, and we're part of those meetings. And the two sides of a big conference table, everybody, the director, the producer, the company manager, all the designers are all at the table. The choreographer, everybody is at the table, and our whole team is at the table. Our producer and director have all seen the shows. They now go before and really pay attention to what's going on. Usually there's been a conversation. And so we set up what is it going to do, and then we go down the line for each department. The music department sets up times, what's going to happen, what kind of music do we need. The set people talk to each other. There's a show and tell about what our theater looks like. How does that fit into their stage? Howard and I go through, what are your props? What are your set pieces going to be? Who's got microphones? What are your costumes? Do they need something special in that department? So that's the first thing. Then they go off and they start doing their part. And we start setting up. The company managers have to send us the cast list plus the stage managers, and we do a budget for the shows. And it costs a lot of money for the shows to do to do what they do. So that also is, where are they in their money position of what can they afford to be doing.
And real quick, I want to clarify for the folks that are watching this, because I was really surprised to learn this when I first learned, but it costs the shows themselves money to appear on the Tony Awards. Like, they foot the bill for almost everything, right?
Correct. Shows go off into their own theaters, and they start rehearsing and figuring out what they're going to do and who's going to be in the show. Very often, the shows allow all of their swings and understudies to perform in the show, if it's a big one. If it's not, then that doesn't get to happen for some of the shows. One of my specific jobs is that I coordinate with the TV script people, and they have to know every single prop, every single set piece, every single person's name, what's their role, what do they do microphone wise, if there are quick changes. So I coordinate with script and give them all that information. So we're in contact all during that next week. The next thing that happens, this is a good story. Remember those 2 years we went to the Beacon? Okay, so what happened is that Radio City had booked a show, and so we couldn't get into Radio City, so we went down across the street from me. That was very convenient, to the Beacon Theater. There's no backstage, the Beacon, none, zip. We actually had to build tents on the street for all the set pieces, and a huge tent in the back for the actors. And because there was no backstage, the pieces we had to cut down what we were doing. So our set designer, Steve Bass, came up with an LED wall, and it was so gorgeous. And it saved the shows money because they would just bring in one piece. We would go, what we did is we went into their theaters and took, shots of their lighting, mm-hmm. and the set, and they rebuilt it onto the LED wall. And when we moved back to Radio City, we realized how gorgeous it was. And now we use it permanently. It's so exquisite, what they've done. The next thing we do, the next big thing, is what's called a scratch tape. They show us what they're going to do. And our director and their director and choreographer work on, where are my camera shots? And so the director says, okay, there's going to be, this is where this person is highlighted. They're going to enter from this side. So Glenn can then go home and do his camera shots. That's his homework that he does over a 2-week span. And then we start scheduling Radio City, the rehearsals at Radio City. Now, again, in the old days when there were 6 or 7 shows, everybody could come in and have an hour and a half, and it fit into our Thursday and Friday. We could only rehearse Thursdays and Fridays. When we started expanding, it didn't fit into Thursday and Friday anymore. So we had to start figuring out what show doesn't have a Wednesday matinee, what show is a 1-act short show, like a band's visit. We send a bus for their cast after their show, and they come into Radio City at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh my gosh.
And do their rehearsal. Their rehearsal process is they go to the recording studio at the beginning of the day, the middle of the day, depending on where they are in the Radio City portion. They do all of their recording. They come in. It's already mixed. Everything, the orchestra plays, the vocals are recorded for the choir, the chorus things. And so they come in and they do their number. They space. They have an hour and a half to space and do everything they need to do. They're out of there, and we've got the next show in.
Wow. So is that, when you're saying they record things, so for the individual performances, is the music and you said certain choral vocal bits are pre-recorded?
All pre-recorded. All the solos are solos, and our live solos. This is a secret that I can tell you. And this is one of my hardest jobs that I do, and one of the most exhilarating and awing of the jobs that I do. It's very tedious. One of the secrets that most of the people in your audience will not know is that Radio City isn't as big as you think it is. And we don't have room for all the companies to get dressed and makeup and everything in Radio City. So every single company goes to their theater, gets in full hair and makeup, and then comes to Radio City. And then they go back. Now, how does that happen? There is a full dress rehearsal Sunday morning, starting around 9 o'clock in the morning till noon. Everybody comes full hair and makeup. Everybody. And then they go back to their theater, and sometimes they'll do a performance because the theater is they still have a matinee. And then they come back in the evening. What we do is I figure out how many people are in the company, how many nominees are there in the company, and how many vehicles do I need. So my job is breaking every show down into buses and vans. So if there's one nominee, right, that person has to have their own vehicle with all their wardrobe people. And at night, their glam team. So in the morning, the nominee comes fully dressed, costume, hair, everything. Their wardrobe people will come and pick out a space. They do get dressing rooms at night. They get a slot, but it's a chorus dressing room. So all those nominees are filtering in and out, no matter whether they're stars or not, into those chorus dressing rooms. So I have to figure out very detailed schedules. All right, you're going to be the opening number. And they get there a half hour ahead of time. They so that they can set up and know where they're going, and I know that they're, all set and in the theater. They go on the stage, they get back in their bus or vans and leave. But on Sunday morning, they overlap. They all come into the theater, into Radio City, and we have an audience section that's off to them. And one of the most extraordinary moments of the Tony Awards is Sunday morning, when 3 to 4 companies are in there at the same time in full costumes and are mixing with each other. And it's just thrilling. It's just thrilling. In the evening, the nominees walk the red carpet. They come in, and the other thing that we have to do is I have to make a timing sheet, a schedule of how long does each nominee need to get dressed and then back into costume, and pull them from the audience at the right time to take them up to meet their costume and their stage manager and the wardrobe people. Get them dressed, get them on the stage, and then back up there in order to be in their seats for their nominations. And that's a very detailed schedule too. And then sometimes, one actor will need 15 minutes, and so we'll pull it. And don't forget, we have to pull during commercials. We can't pull during the show. So they get pulled during commercials, and they get reseated during commercials. And then some actress will need 45 minutes to get ready. Shrek needed his own space to get into makeup in Radio City. We allowed him to do that, and that took 2 hours. So he had to be there at like 7 o'clock in the morning for dress rehearsal. And then he was back, and he had to have time to get out of all that makeup for his nomination. So things like that are part of my very detailed job.
That is so wonderfully complicated. I love that so much.
You should see our, when I started doing this with Alan, there was only him and me. And we would pull, and we had one person outside with the buses and the vans taking care of that. We now have 6 people on our team. It takes 6 of us to get all of the, which bus goes in which slot and when are they coming, and they have to wait over there across the street for a while. And I have a great team that has been with the show for a long time too. I think a couple of them have been there for 10 years. And they just come in for that week for the show. But boy, do they, thank goodness they do that lifting once I can hand that off, that schedule. But that schedule is minute to minute for when people are pulling out, when people are pulling in, how many casts do we have in the theater at the same time? We can't. So it's very convoluted. There have been a couple of times now that we do opening numbers with everybody. So sometimes so they come in costume. Some of them have to go back to their theaters and then come back for their numbers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And there have been a couple of times where we've done that and they couldn't go back. So we set up on the 9th floor, their big rehearsal, the Rockettes dance rehearsal space. Then we set up makeshift dressing rooms for them. And a couple of times we've set one of the big rehearsal spaces up so that the cast can stay there and watch the show on TV, because I don't have time to send them back and forth safely.
So could that potentially, you gave the example of Shrek, could that potentially change where they have to go, where they have to perform in the lineup? Like if Shrek is nominated for Best Leading Actor and that's coming at the end, but he needs 2 hours to get into and out of makeup, I'm sure it's less than 2 hours to get out of it.
And
but
when I first started, the producers and directors, I wasn't a known entity to them. And I I would look at it sometime and they would give me a hard time about going in and saying that person doesn't have enough time. And well, they had 10 minutes. I said, yes, but it's a woman getting out of this costume and going into her glam, and it's her nomination. And now they come to me and they make me look at what's called the board, and me and Howard go in and say, this person has that much time, and they'll flip where the performances go because for that exact reason.
That kind of flows right into talking about the challenges of working on a high-profile live event. I feel like that must be at least top 10 of your challenges, getting everyone into and out of
the costumes and making sure that they have enough time and everything. And the wonderfulness is working with each of the stage managers of the shows, because there are stage managers that have done it even more than me, have been on, not every year like I have, but that have done shows all in the 80s and the early 90s and stuff, that they're still working. And so they've done 10 shows, 10 Tony Awards. Then there's a stage manager that will come in and it's their first time. And Howard and I will sit down with them and say, listen, this is, there's a lot here. We're here for you. Don't you worry. We'll take care of you. And it's overwhelming of what they have to find and do. On the other hand, the high profile parts are getting to know which actors are real easy to work with and which actors to know that, okay, this person just got nominated. We've worked with them before. They're going to need a little bit more hand touching. And
you've got a lot to choose from with the past 15 ceremonies, but what's been your favorite memory of working the Tony Awards?
It's not just the one, it's Sunday morning. Sunday morning is always so special. And for me, it's very hard work because I have to make sure everybody's in and all the buses are there and all the, things, and then handing them off to the DGA stage managers, making sure everybody gets mic'd up. Sometimes they're coming from their theaters with mics. Sometimes they have to go back, but we pack everybody at our theater. So everybody has to get packed in our theater. So I think the most wonderful is that Sunday morning, every year, that Sunday morning. One of the most wonderful moments was the year that we did the In Memoriam with all the casts singing and the elevators came up. Again, getting all those people in the right places and the right time and bringing them back, and some in costume, some in but watching from backstage as the elevator rose for that was weeping moment. Every year I get to do it, I just feel so, how did I get here? How extraordinary is what I get to do for those 6 weeks. When we first started, we only had 4 weeks from nomination to the end. Whew. And because the gentleman added more shows and more things, now are at 6 weeks. But it's 6 weeks, that's my job. When I go to the party on Sunday night, I'm out of there.
What's something that a lot of people don't realize about the Tony Awards? We talked a little bit about a couple of things that I may or may not have to edit out. But what are some secrets if there are any secrets that you can tell us that a lot of people don't necessarily realize that are looking at it from the outside?
The Sunday morning is a dress rehearsal with audience. It's only there are very few people. It's not all up, it's not a big audience. And they're, of course, not allowed to sit in where the nominations are. And so that's a little bit of a secret that, so that the companies do get the feeling of reaction. And what's fun is on that morning, some of the star presenters will show up and do their rehearsal in front for that dress rehearsal. It'll be the first time. So we're even sometimes, because we don't, that's a whole different, I don't have anything to do with that part of the show. So I even get surprised sometimes when somebody shows up in their streetwear, because they don't have to get dressed for that dress rehearsal. And so it's really fun to be surprised when a real star presenter shows up for that rehearsal.
All right. Well, before we sign off, do you have any advice for folks that are up and coming stage managers that might want to follow in your footsteps, either into the Tony Awards or just into stage management in general?
Into the world of theater in general, my suggestion is follow your imagination wherever it can go. If you love theater, you will find your way and what you want to be doing in theater. And also, it doesn't have to only be theater. One of the things that I did, now I'm a woman on my own. When I had a hit show, I knew had a job for a couple of years. I went and volunteered at the Museum of Natural History, and I became an archaeologist. I've been going on digs, and I'll go 8 weeks and I'll go on a dig, and I'll come back and get a theater job. And I went to college when I was 40 years old. The other thing that I've done is I've gone into politics. I went and volunteered on a political campaign for Geraldine Ferraro in '92. I didn't have a job. They put me on staff. I worked her campaign on staff for a year. And since then, that's another job that I've done. So don't narrow yourself to just being like your parents say. You have to find something where you're going to make a living. There are other choices, and you can still come back to theater.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Marjorie, for coming on the show today. It was so wonderful to get to talk to you about the Tony Awards and everything else that we've covered today. So thank you so much for taking the time for doing this. And thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name is Kent, and this has been your Half Hour Call. This snazzy feathered production assistant, as well as other cool stage management merchandise, is now available at kentjamescollins.com/store. Link in the description below.